Your podcast episode description may be a little bit of an afterthought. If it is, then you may be missing out on listeners who are hooked in with your title but not convinced if the episode is worth listening to. So in this video, you are going to learn the 3-sentence episode description framework that is going to have your listeners hitting play. If you are an expert looking for the best advice on how to grow your podcast audience, subscribe to my channel and hit the bell to be notified when I post a new video. My name is Deidre Shen, the CEO and co-founder of Capsho, the world's first AI-powered podcast copywriter. I have been working with experts who cumulatively have banked over $1.6 million in sales from podcasting. And I myself did over $200,000 in my first year ever podcasting because I stumbled upon all of these little known secrets. So let's get into exactly what you should be doing in your episode description to get your audience to hit play immediately.
We are going to be going into how to use content honey traps in our episode descriptions to instantly increase the number of downloads and listens that you get. Because I know we put so much effort into creating content and recording the actual episode. Maybe we've hired someone to actually do the podcast, production and editing for us. And a lot of times we think that that's it. That's all we need to do to get this thing right. But it's actually not. This is the mistake that I see time and time again. This is just one of the puzzle pieces. Like your actual podcast is just one of the puzzle pieces, because is there even any point in creating the best podcast content if no one is even going to listen to it? I don't know about you, but I definitely want to get an ROI on this time. So yeah, I'm going to want people to listen to this. And to do that, we need to create compelling episode descriptions. Okay, so let's get into how we do that. And we're going to skip the generic advice, let's keep it short, blah, blah, blah. We're going to get straight into the heart of it, okay, by using content honey traps. That is literally the first sentence of the description.
Yes.
Is to actually use a content honey trap. So the reason why we want to do that is because we are always, as copywriters, or even not even as copywriters, as business owners, really, as entrepreneurs, whenever we write any type of copy, sales page, email, social media post, whatever it is, we need to know, if we don't already know, that we have to start with a hook, with a curiosity hook. And this is where the whole content honey trap system comes into play, because we are all about creating that curiosity, because we want to compel people to do that next thing that you want them to.
Yes.
In this case, episode descriptions, we want to compel people to actually listen to your podcast episode.
Yes.
So we want to tease enough so that it lets the listener know what it is that they're going to be in for.
Yeah.
But we don't want to tell them, because we want to do it just to the point where we open this loop in their minds and they're like, dang it, I need to close this loop.
Yeah.
Let me listen to the episode.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So this is where content honey traps comes in.
Yes.
So I want you to, I think when, we got to episode 74, 75, and you were probably like, you know what? Let me do the copywriting.
This is way too fun to have you do it.
Let me do the copywriting. So as our expert copywriter, can you take us through what the top, so we have 8 mental models, content honey traps. Again, you guys, if you do not know what these are, go back to episode 1 and 2. So in episode 1, we break down the story-based ones, content honey trap mental models. In episode 2, we break down the tips-based ones.
Yeah.
But out of those 8, you've actually got a handful that when you think about descriptions, that you lead with.
Yes.
So can you take us through what the top ones are that you would start with?
Yeah, so the first one, because creating, everyone knows that they need to create curiosity and hook people in, but it's like how, right? So these are really powerful ways to think about it. So one of the 4 that I find works really well and is an easy place to start is the boxer. So the boxer is one of our content honey trap models, and it is couched in a pain point that your ideal listener really knows very, very well. So it's really about how can you structure the sentence, the first part of your episode description, into a question, is usually the most powerful form, about a pain point that that they will know intimately. So for example, in our case, an example of that is like, are you feeling fatigued and frankly embarrassed
constantly promoting your podcast on social media, not getting any engagement. So we've heard that time and again from podcasters saying, oh, like, I know I need to do it, but it's kind of embarrassing. Like, it's another audiogram or another graphic I've pulled together, and
it just doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
What's even the point of
exactly
doing it?
The feeling fit, and it's like, oh yes. So it's, again, it doesn't have to be anything, you know, crazy. Like, this is the thing, don't think you have to be clever with it, just get right to the point. So a pain point works really, really well, especially if you know, and that's kind of, you know, where you live, where you help people solve problems. So the box is a really, really good one. Now I know you use the boxer quite well, relatively quite well too. I'm sorry, a lot of the time, and because there's just so many different ones. The main thing here is to be specific with the one that you're picking. The other one that is that's an interesting one to try is what we call the rebel. So this is, especially as experts who podcast, you would have a very specific perspective and way that thing that you're teaching people, right? So this is really about making a powerful statement that goes against, say, you know, maybe conventional wisdom in your space, or it's kind of busting a myth, you know, that a lot of people still believe, right?
Yes.
So this is like, again, it kind of just really arrests someone's attention, because they're like, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way, or yes, I believe that too, now let me follow through on this. So an example in our case would be something like, what if I told you repurposing content doesn't actually give you scale for your business, right? Because that's bandied about a lot, to say just repurpose one piece of content and you're going to get scale. And, you know, we have a whole philosophy around that, which we're not giving away in the description itself. But it's either the people saying, hang on, I don't know if I agree with that. Wait, isn't that what everyone says? It opens a loop, like you said. Or they're like, oh, finally, someone else who also thinks the same thing. Now let me listen to this person. So again, it's super relevant. So they know it's relevant because it relates to the topic. But it opens a loop that they just need to close in some way. So that's the rebel, the second out of 4. Now the third one is one of my favorites. This is called the cliffhanger. So this is when you do have, you know, we always advise you to tell your story, obviously in a podcast, every podcast episode, or a story of yours. Or like a lot of podcasters, if you're interviewing, then, you know, it's all about your guest story, right? Yeah. So the cliffhanger mental model in your episode description is all about picking a really juicy and compelling part of either your story that you're telling or your guest story, and including that in the description. So this one's a little bit difficult because you kind of like, how much of it do you write? Sometimes there might be a really quick quip that you can put in there. Sometimes it needs a little bit of context setting. One that I personally really liked was on How I Built This Podcast, where they were talking about this wine company, and, you know, with hardly any money or connections, Robin McBride and Andrea McBride John built one of the biggest Black-owned wine companies in the world, a journey that began with an extraordinary family discovery. They're half sisters who didn't even know of each other's existence until they're both young women.
What?
Right? And it's
I need to know what happened.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, because the audience are people who, you know, like we talked about in a previous episode, other entrepreneurs who want to learn from other entrepreneurs. So entrepreneurs who want to learn from other entrepreneurs. And, you know, it's kind of like, what does the half sister have to do with the wine? And, you know, again, but I know that they built this amazing, there's an outcome, there's an entrepreneurial, commercial outcome that is hooking me in. And this, and again, these two, and I wonder what their lives were like, and what did they meet, and what was that like? Again, just so many questions. You know, so many questions that it opens up. Again, they're super relevant. People who aren't interested in entrepreneurship will probably scroll right on by, aren't even looking at that podcast, right? So the cliffhangers are really, if you've got a juicy moment, you definitely want to use that one. And finally, we have the Marvel. So this one is a really fun one as well. As experts in our space, we have our own methodology and unique ways of doing it. We love giving them a name. We highly recommend giving them a name. We should actually have like a framework name generator or something. I feel like,
I have so many names. So like Content Honey Traps and Honey Trap Marketing and the Traffic Pyramid and Messageletics, and oh gosh, I name everything.
That's right. I think you should maybe offload that into another framework of anyway. But why that works really well is not to be like, you know, kitschy about it. It's just more like it grounds it in something. Again, creates curiosity to be like, I want to know what that means, right? But then you link it to an outcome. So you want to mention either what you use or your guest if you're interviewing people, and then to say learn all about that, you know, in this episode, right? So you're opening up another loop to say, yep, this is the outcome that I want. So, you know, it doesn't even have to be anything too creative like Content Honey Traps. We've used sub frameworks like our 5-minute episode titling formula. again, it's super simple. You know exactly what you're going to get. It's a 5-minute thing for me,
Yes.
you know, and it's like, and I struggle with episode titles. Let me listen to what this framework is all about.
Yes. I love that. Okay, so just to recap, that first sentence of your episode description should have that content honey trap. That's where you should be laying it. You should be laying content honey traps everywhere through your funnel, but really, because we're focusing on descriptions, that should be your first sentence. What is that? How do you create that curiosity? And Bono just went through 4 really powerful mental models to use. So the boxer, the rebel, the cliffhanger, and the marvel. So you guys, if you need to pause this, go back and listen to what those were. Go do that. But that is incredibly important. So that's the first sentence. All right.
Yes.
Then we get into the second sentence, and this is all about what it is that your audience is going to learn.
Yes.
Okay, what is that tangible outcome that they are going to get from listening to this episode? So you've hooked them in, they're like, oh, I need to know more. And then you've given them value. You're like, and if you listen to this episode, not only will I help close that loop for you that I just opened up, but you're actually going to take away these things.
Yes.
Right? Super valuable. That's what people want to see, because they're like, well, if I'm going to give up 30, 40 minutes or whatever of my time, I want to make sure that I'm going to get the thing, I'm going to get the goods. So talk us through how we craft this, or like, what do we think about for the second sentence?
Yeah, I don't know about you, but definitely writing this part of it feels a little bit easier, because I'm like, now I can just go into my coach mode and be like, I don't have to think about all these, curiosity hooks and stuff like that. But yeah, this is about keeping it really short and simple, and it has to be tangible. So here's what you're going to learn. I'm also working on things like, 'cause this is prime real estate, how can you take out filler words like in this episode? So I'm trying to think of this is what you're gonna like.
Yes.
Just trying to be as punchy as possible, because again, people are already in your description, right?
Yes.
We don't need all of the extra lead-ins. So keep it really, really short. What is the most tangible outcome they're going to get? Two things work really well here. Like with everything, episode description, people are constantly scanning. So what helps with scannability is if you find that you do have quite a lot of takeaways you're giving away, bullet point works really well. So you can just be like, these are the things. Or if you're like, there's just this one super juicy thing, just
one
brevity, exactly, just one to say, this is the thing you're going to take away. I'm done, I'm sold.
Yes.
So that is how I like to think about it. Keep it as short and as succinct as possible, because if they've got to that stage, the hooks worked really well.
Yes.
People are going, okay, now as I say, it's a logical decision to go, is it worth my time?
Yes.
What am I going to take away from this? Make it tangible, make it real, either one big outcome or in list form that's super easy to scan.
Yeah. Wow. Gosh, that's so simple, you guys.
Simple, yeah.
So first sentence, hook them in. Second sentence, tell them, give them the value, like what is the tangible outcome that they're going to get. And the third sentence or section, and you can already see, like, I don't need to tell you to keep this short, because we've already done that work for you. You're going to keep it short, because this is just a 1, 2, 3. So third sentence is, if you have a guest, you want to put their bio in, just a short bio, not a full page one, just one sentence. If you don't have, so if you have a guest, put the bio in, and then also a link to the show notes. If you don't have a guest, then just the link to the show notes.
Yep.
And this is really important, okay? Because this comes back to, there's a description, there's a show notes. What?
Yeah.
So yes, you need show notes. Show notes is really important, and we'll probably will get into this in another episode. But one reason why they're super important is because it makes you searchable.
It does.
On Google.
Yes. I
was like, anywhere else, but mainly Google, because that's where most of the searching happens.
That people still use apparently.
Yes. You need show notes, because that actually, the show notes live on another website page. There are tools that can help that super simple for you if you don't want to build a website, or if you don't want to bother with that. You want to have your show notes there, because then you can actually go into more depth.
Yeah.
And have really, really targeted, clear call to actions.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
This is our whole, when we talk about content honey traps and laying them through your front end funnel, it's very much, how do you go from promoting your podcast to getting them to click on the link to go to and then obviously they have to know that the title, hooks them in. They're like, yes, this is a topic that I'm interested in. They start to read the description just to double check. And this is what we're talking about in this episode. They listen to your podcast, and then what you want them to be doing is to go to your show notes.
Yes.
Because then you can you can go crazy with like, these are all the call to actions and these are the things I want you to do. I mean, obviously not too many. So maybe I'll take go crazy back. But super important.
Yeah.
Anything that you wanted to add to this last section?
I think this is a really crucial part of it. Like we talk about, obviously the guest is important, but people miss the show notes all the time, and we get it. It is an additional task and feel really laborious, but it is really well worth your while, because for people, like you said, that are really, because this is the other thing too, people read your description after they listen as well, because instantly, if you've done a good job in your episode, they want to go back and say, I want to know more, or what was that, that thing again? And there you can get them to click. So all I can really say is that that's really important. And then, the show notes, writing show notes can be a bit of a drag, which is Capsho is going to help you with.
Capsho does it all. And you know what? In fact, Capsho actually helps you with these descriptions. So exactly what we spoke through, this is how Capsho does it too for you. Instantly, just off your audio. You don't even have to do anything. I mean, you can edit it and add the dots if you like to.
Of course. Yeah, because Capsho can't quite do that. And we're not building that feature. Even though Deidre tries to prioritize it on our board, we're like, no dot.
So look, Capsho's got your back. Capsho has got your back.
In the comments if you learned something new in this video, and if you want to hear the full story behind how I stumbled upon this particular secret, then listen to episode 8 of the Grow My Podcast show. The link is below in the description. This video out if you want to learn the proven podcast title formula to double your listens, and this one if you want to level up your episode intro, those first 5 crucial minutes of your episode to hook your listeners so they stay until the end. That's right down here.